Today on the Davenport podcast.
I mean, everyone who's seen my photo knows I'm follically challenged.
But within 6 weeks, I had every Bob Marley CD.
Sorry, I took us right off the edge.
And I look tired because I am tired.
At some point in your 40s, you're like, I don't care.
Yeah. What will the world miss out on?
Do you have a can of chili in your pantry?
I think that's the antidote.
That's
Identities.
a permanent identity for me.
You know, you might get away with that when you're 80.
Oh, did you watch the baseball game?
Yeah.
Nope.
I'm a seed. Deal with it.
Right. Thank you. That's unwanted feedback. I
Yeah.
won't.
You don't need to use the microphone.
Welcome to the podcast. Welcome back to the Davenport.
Good to be here.
As always. What is this, our third, fourth?
I don't know.
We're getting a couple
comfy
of these
couch, right?
under our belt. Yeah.
The Davenport. I like that some of our listeners have commented on understanding what the Davenport is.
Yeah.
A few people have been like, my grandma called it the Davenport, and it was great. That
Total
people
send
could-
up to a past generation
Maybe we have a whole crew of grandmas listening to us on the
on their Davenports.
on their Davenport.
They're all joining us from their individual Davenports.
Right.
Funny story. So I was, I didn't formally tell my family about this, but they kind of heard it through social media and stuff. And I talked to my brother, and he's like, oh, I saw the title of your podcast. I was like, wait a second, I know what that means. And so we were talking to my mother about the Davenport couch, and she says it's still around. It's
Oh, wow.
at my aunt's house.
Photo op. We need
Yeah,
that.
I was like, we need to go. We need to go to visit the Davenport.
That's
So
funny.
it still exists.
They don't make furniture like that anymore.
Just I'm waiting to surprise you. You're going to come show up to record this one week, and it's going to be sitting here.
I'll look forward to it. It may not be as comfy because you said it's scratchy.
Yeah, it's.
I know exactly that kind of fabric that
Yeah,
they used to
what
use,
they
and
used
it's
to
like
make.
scratchy.
There's I don't know what the
It
material
I
is.
think the incentive was that you didn't spend much time on it.
It wasn't a cozy like we have
Yeah.
overstuffed,
Yes.
fluffy couches nowadays, and this was like you're waiting for a doctor's appointment.
But
Anyway, we were talking, I guess, off air. We wanted to kind of continue a little bit from our last episode where we talked about imposter syndrome.
yeah,
And it led into an interesting conversation about unwanted identities.
yeah, it's
So
something.
tell us, what did that mean to you?
You know,
Unwanted identities.
Unwanted identities. It's something I do a lot in the Daring Greatly curriculum
Okay.
through Brene Brown stuff. But it's just the idea of how people perceive us, right? So when you hear people say, oh, I'm just a stay-at-home mom, it's
Okay.
somehow this unwanted identity, or I'm old, or or when someone says, oh, you look tired. Well, like, isn't it okay to be tired? Or, we have these unwanted
That's
identities.
a permanent identity for me.
I always joke, why can't I just say to someone, I'm 49 and I look tired because I am
I
tired.
am tired.
But I feel like I can say I'm 49, but I shouldn't look 49. Or we just have these unwanted identities, and some of them are cultural. Sometimes it's in our families. Maybe weight is an unwanted identity in some families, or socioeconomic status is, like I've had friends who, when they were dating a teacher, their parents were a little uncertain about that.
Dating a teacher.
Right.
Okay.
Or you're dating someone maybe with not as much education as your parents, or that somehow there are these unwanted identities rather than really thinking about what connects us or what would make us happiest.
So
right?
I have one.
Mhm.
This goes back to elementary school. I'm going to take you way back.
Got it.
And I don't know if it's just because my name, but I think I was shy growing up. But I got the label shy guy.
Oh,
And,
it rhymes.
Oh, yeah. kids, right?
Right.
And I didn't think I was necessarily being shy. I think I felt more aloof. I don't know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I chose not to talk. But I can acknowledge I was shy. I was, not as outgoing as I am now. And I got this label shy guy, and people would, hey, shy guy, oh, it's shy guy. And even like unintentionally, like teachers and adults would introduce you that way. This is guy, he's shy.
Which is funny, knowing you in your adult life, it's just not even a way I would describe you.
Well, so how does the unwanted identity work? Is it acknowledging it, or is it growing through it? Because I actively took steps from a young age to say, I'm not going to be a shy guy.
Right.
Right.
Well, I think part of it is asking yourself kind of, what does that perception mean to you?
Right.
So
does
clearly,
it serve you, or does it
right,
hurt you?
You
or,
didn't like it.
Yeah.
Like, for example, in one of Brene Brown's books, she uses the example of being sick as an unwanted identity. Like
someone who's always sick,
right?
Or like a sickly person.
This woman who was saying, my parents didn't shame us if we were sick, because an unwanted identity is a shame trigger, right?
Because I was just thinking that as you're saying that, I was like, to me, I have a negative connotation with unwanted.
Yeah.
Unwanted. I don't want it.
It's a shame trigger for sure. And so she said, we didn't get shamed when we were sick. We stayed home from school. My parents took care of us. But when my parents were sick, they worked through it. No one took a break. I'm going to tough it out. And so she found herself really sick. I think it's like a pregnancy or something. And she was so sick and she couldn't function. And her husband said, you're sick. You have to stop. You have to rest. It doesn't make you weak, or it doesn't make you bad because you're sick.
But her upbringing taught her that was not the case. That you were bad or lazy or unproductive.
And so I think we have to identify what kinds of things we get from our childhood or stereotypes or whatever that kind of feed into those unwanted identities. And, I think being a middle-aged woman right now in America age is a big thing, right? I went through these statistics. I'm going to go through some of these actually, because when you think about weight and age and what our society does, like there's shows about plastic surgery. There's shows about the housewives of any major city in America, right? And it's not a true depiction of a housewife, right? It's this concept, and it's quote reality TV, and I'm like, wow, that has never been a part of my reality, But I pulled these statistics out of the curriculum from Brene Brown, and she says something interesting. She says, weight is a huge unwanted identity. 25 years ago, top models and beauty queens weighed 8% less than the average woman. Now they're 23% less. That's a pretty big
gap.
Yeah. The current media ideal for women is achievable by less than 5% of the female population. And since 1997, there has been a 465% increase in the total number of cosmetic procedures. 90% of those being women. That's huge. Yeah. That's a huge discrepancy. Like, men aren't walking around going, oh gosh, I got to get my eyelids done. I look tired. It just doesn't happen. Right. But women are doing, going through extreme measures. So at 49, I should look 30. Or I need to, for somehow to be more acceptable in society. Right. So the other thing was the top 5 surgical procedures for women were liposuction, breast augmentation, eyelid surgery, tummy tuck, and facelift. We spent $12.5 billion on cosmetic procedures in 2004. So you think about what that is in 2020. I don't have that stat. But aging and weight, pretty cultural unwanted identities.
Right. So would you say if it's, I guess that there's two sides to this, right? Mm-hmm. Is there a side that says if it's an unwanted identity that you have received,
right,
either from family, culture, society, and you don't agree with it, you're empowered to change it?
Yes. Think about what you did with shy.
Right.
Right. So what you ultimately go
does that vindicate like plastic surgery, or is the unwanted identity the result of the plastic surgery that someone's being pressured into doing?
Well, I think you ask yourself,
sorry, go ahead.
What happens if I allow myself to be defined as middle-aged, overweight woman?
Okay.
Then what will everyone miss out on? Well, they would miss out on a friend who likes to spend time with you or connect with you, or, there's so much more than how old we are or what we weigh or if we're shy or if we're not shy. Right. So if you had let yourself buy into this identity
that I was shy,
everyone told me I'm shy, so I'm a shy guy.
Yeah.
Well, you certainly wouldn't be sitting here doing a podcast. I mean, I just think
it would be a very different tone podcast, very, very private.
Right. I just think we have to ask ourselves, if I allow this perception to define me, what will the world miss out on?
I like that. Yeah.
And there's a lot behind that, right? I'm much more than how many kids I have, or, my marital status or whatever. And so we just have to be careful about how we define ourselves and identify where these perceptions come from.
Right. Like even, we're kind of in the thick of kids, right? And school and all that, but once kids have moved on, right? Your main job is to get these kids ready to leave, and you're home alone with your spouse, right? Empty nester.
That scares some people.
Right. So is that, what side of the unwanted identity is that? Is that the identity of I'm a parent, and now that I'm not a parent, I don't want the identity of being an empty nester? Or is it's like I put all my investment into the stock of parenting, and then that business closed. Well, and now I'm left wondering, who am I?
Yeah, I don't even know if that's unwanted identity, as that's just more identity crisis stuff. Because
sorry, I took us right off the edge, right?
Because unwanted identity is I'm only defined as a mom. So there might be a mom who, when their kids leave, are kind of like, I don't even know what to do with myself because I lost myself being a mom. I stopped paying attention to who I was. And so So
the mom identity was applied, but the true identity is, Jane Doe, whoever she is.
I'm Jamie. I'm a mom. I'm a friend. I'm a daughter. Right. I'm a sister. And so
but if you just broad stroke and say, well, you're just a mom.
Right.
And usually it's prefaced with just, right?
Right.
Just a mom. Then it kind of limits you from saying, well, I'm also Jamie, and I'm a swimmer, and I, like whatever this is.
Right. And it's interesting. I think about the movie with Julia Roberts, Runaway Bride. Do you remember this movie? Oh, it's rom-com 90s night at your house tonight. So it's called Runaway Bride.
I already have to rewatch The Wizard of Oz to get bone up on what happens in the end.
But in this movie, she's engaged to a million guys, and she always breaks off the engagement before the wedding. And and the whole premise of the movie is she kind of morphs herself into whoever she's dating. So, and most girls, anyway, I'm going to speak in general on behalf of girls. I can remember as a young girl doing this. I remember dating a guy my freshman year who loved reggae music. Well, I did not own a single reggae CD, but within 6 weeks I had every Bob Marley CD. I had every kind of, I had Ziggy Marley. I mean, I just had so now every time I hear one of those songs, I just start laughing. I don't love reggae music. It's fine, but it's not like, I'm like, hey, let's pull out some Bob Marley.
Reminds you of that relationship, right?
But I just think, well, it was I wasn't really being true to myself, somehow. And so in this movie, that's what Julia Roberts does, right? And Richard Gere is this reporter doing a story on this runaway bride. And he really pushes her. And he's like, you don't even know yourself. And she gets really defensive. And so there's a scene in the movie, and I've actually had my clients go home and watch this movie for this scene. And then I want them to have this experience themselves. There's a scene where she has every kind of egg in front of her, a hard-boiled egg, a scrambled egg, a fried egg, because she's just like scrambled eggs because her boyfriend likes it, or her fiance, or whatever. And same with ice cream. She does it with every flavor of ice cream. And she finally comes back to Richard Gere and she's like, I don't like eggs. Oh. And I like vanilla ice cream. But she just kind of had to go through this process of, instead of just kind of going with whoever she's with, kind of being a chameleon, so to speak, she had to take some time to figure out who she is. And I think as a mom, it's great to be proud of being a mom and put my whole self into it. But something I want to teach my daughter is that I have interests and passions too.
Yeah.
And that because I'm a mom, not just because I'm a mom, I want you to always feel that passion for your life. So yeah, I'm going to take piano lessons, or I'm going to take a tennis class, or I'm going to start a podcast, or whatever this is, so that she always has the knowledge and understanding that she's a person as well as a mom, as well as a daughter, as well as an employee.
She's built that foundation of who she is.
Right.
that then you can add on to, but it doesn't change the foundation.
Right.
Right.
And
you can remodel the top of the house however you want.
right.
The foundation's solid.
And whatever the unwanted identity is, we have to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Like why is it so unwanted? And I can remember also in college writing a list of goals back in the days of the Franklin Day Planner. Do you remember those things?
Oh, yeah. That was a whole cultural movement, wasn't it?
I had like the big Franklin Day Planner and it had
you can't see this, but her hands are about a foot apart.
And it was navy blue leather. Yeah, they were thick. And I carried that thing around. But I remember I had these goals written down and I was sitting in church on a Sunday and I had it open and I was kind of evaluating my goals and my roommate was sitting next to me and she just starts laughing and I'm looking at her and she's like, and I'm like, what's wrong? And she points to one of my goals and she's just like, and we're in church, right? So she's trying to be reverent, so to speak, but she's just like crying. She's laughing so hard because one of my goals, what was in there was not be so loud. And those of you who know me know that I don't have an inside voice. I remember my freshman year in college, people would be like, oh, I could hear you coming. I'm like, do I walk like an elephant? Like, it's just, it was just, I just am loud. And at the time I was trying to change that. I was like, how can I change this? That was one of your goals. It was one of my goals to be less loud and be aware and conscientious of that. And I remember this roommate looking at me and she's like, that's like saying you wish you had brown eyes and you have blue eyes.
Yeah.
Like you're just, this is who you are. This is how people, identify you. And so for me, I had to ask, why is that so unwanted? Well, I finally realized, I think because I thought it was unpleasing to people, and it is for some. But if they want to have that identity for me, they'll lose out on someone who could be a good friend or someone who could,
Well, I think too, it feeds that imposter syndrome we talked about last time, right? If you're accepting an unwanted identity and you're going to go with it, naturally you're going to feel a little bit fraudulent, like you're an imposter because it's not even you,
right?
So then when you do have a genuine identity, you doubt yourself.
Right.
Because you have this history of faking it. It's like such a cycle, right?
Right. And my point about the whole being loud is it's not so much that it's an unwanted identity for me anymore. It's something that I accept about myself, that I am louder than a lot of people. And, I remember teaching a large group of young people one time and they're like, you don't need to use the microphone. And I was like, great.
And in fact, it's kind of hurting our ears. Yeah. Could you just maybe take the microphone off?
I was a lifeguard. Yeah. I was good at getting your attention. Right. And so
and enough with the whistle too. We don't need the whistle.
Right. And you have to reframe it. Right. So some people may say it's loud and I make them uncomfortable. And I have to see it as, well, I just kind of make my presence known. Yeah.
No, I as we're talking here, I'm thinking, that identity, I'm not, what's the word? Look, I'm dancing here. I don't even want to disclose. I'm not a big sports fan, right? And there's kind of this stigma that, you're supposed to like sports. You're supposed to be into sports. You're supposed to be whatever the stats of the latest game.
But according to who, right?
Right. So that this identity that you're supposed to do that, right? And you play along. And then at some point in your 40s, you're like, I don't care.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't care anymore, right? I like cars, and I don't judge anyone who doesn't like cars.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't hang out with them as much, and I'm drawn to people who do like cars. But it's gotten finally, 40 years to be like, oh, did you watch the baseball game? Oh, no.
Yeah.
Nope.
Was there one?
Exactly. Like, I generally know some names. I can keep a conversation going, but I could really care less.
Right.
And I don't say that. You just no. Simple no.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for many years, felt like you had to hustle. Like I'll watch that just to keep up on it.
Right. But that's working through something that is maybe an unwanted identity, and you realize this is okay for me.
Yeah, that's right. So I feel that term unwanted identity is like there's two sides to it, right? And you can be looking at it from either way, right? You feel that your voice is louder, and you either embrace that, or you say my voice isn't loud at all. Right? I don't want that identity. You're shy and you say, yeah, I'm shy. I'm fine with that. Or I'm not shy. You don't know me. I'm not shy, but you've perceived me as shy. Yeah. And I took it like for me as work to do to really show people my true self. Right. And then
Yeah.
I became less shy as time. No one calls me shy guy anymore.
Right.
Right.
That's why I'm like so shocked as you're telling me this story from your childhood.
Right. And please don't start calling me that. That's
Don't write in.
Right.
Hey, shy guy.
We don't want to bring back the trauma. We don't want to bring.
Right. But I think that goes back to even, is it a bad thing to do plastic surgery? No.
Right.
But it's about am I trying to fix something about myself to make myself more acceptable rather than this is something I want to do because it's about, it ties in with the person I want to be and what I want to give the world.
Right. I mean, everyone who's seen my photo knows I'm follically challenged. I'm okay with it. But if I decided tomorrow I want a full head of luscious hair, I can do that.
Right.
If I'm feeling pressured to get hair because everyone else has hair, then I need to kind of check what the motivation is, right?
Right.
If you're feeling pressured, then that's an unwanted identity.
Right.
Right.
And
that
so
bald is bad.
Right. I have no problem if a woman wants to have a procedure because that enhances who she is as an individual and that's what she wants. Great. But it gets into this, like, is that why we're doing that?
Right.
What does it mean to look your age? What does it mean to look like maybe you had 4 kids? Or what does it mean that you stayed up all night and maybe your face shows it? I just think we have to be compassionate with ourselves too.
I mean, kindness, right? It goes back to kindness, to kind of accept people as they show up.
Right.
And see them for their humanness
Right.
and not for their plastic surgery or their fake hair or their, loud voice or personality. It is, I mean, now more than ever, right? Culturally, just society, if we just want to jump in, make assumptions, classify and move on and let people just fall by the side.
Yeah. And I think that the point really is that we don't reduce ourselves to those identities.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think when we reduce ourselves, I think it's easy to reduce those around us to their unwanted identities too.
True. Yeah.
And that's just not a pleasant way to live. I think we don't get as much out of our relationships when we do that. I think, especially when I'm working with couples, couples will start to see each other in their unwanted identities,
Well, isn't it easier? I mean, do you find that people can point out that in others or give an unwanted identity to someone?
Yes, but you're really quick to see it in yourself, I think. And if you grew up in a family that, like, let's use the sick one, right?
Okay.
Then you will see people who are chronically sick as like, oh, maybe they're weaker than you, or they're, there's something not as right. And so it's being really aware of where those identities come from and what they mean to you, and being able to work through some of them and let go of them. And then the other ones recognizing like, hey, I'm okay. When someone says, how old are you? I don't have to plead the fifth.
Yeah. Do you think it's kind of an inventory process too? Like if someone if you're saying, hey, do you have a can of chili in your pantry? They can say, maybe, I don't know. But if you say, go check your pantry, is there chili there or not? I don't know why I said chili, but I can't remember the last time I've eaten chili, but chili. It's easy to go to the pantry and look on the shelf and see if there's a can of chili.
Yeah.
So if someone's like, "Oh, Jamie, you're nosy," like, well, if you know that you're not, it's pretty easy to be like, "Well, thank you. That's unwanted feedback. I won't. I'll move on."
Yeah.
But if you're not sure, and you're kind of like, "Wow, who am I today?" Right?
Oh, yeah.
And then someone says, "Well, you're nosy," then you're kind of, oh, maybe I am, right? Everything becomes a suggestion.
Or am I?
Right. I've had friends that are that way. The smallest thing you say it and they're like, oh, do I need to look into that? Do I, and I think it really comes down to kind of a personal inventory of who are you?
Yes.
What do you love? What do you not love? Again, I know we talk about this you like the word feelings. My question is, what do you want?
Right. And mine is, how do you feel?
How do you feel? Yeah. What do you want? How do you feel about it?
Right.
It comes down to that. If you have done your inventory, kind of done your self-work, where you know who you are, right? If someone says you're loud or quiet, you say, I am who I am. If someone says I'm shy, it's easy for me to say, I'm not really shy.
Yeah.
Maybe that looked shy to you, or according to your definition, that was shy, but it's me.
I'm okay with it.
I'm okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't internalize it because my foundation has already been decided
Right.
before this input was received.
Right. And I go back to that question, what will people miss about you if you give into that?
Yeah.
And I just think if you had given into shy guy, the world would have missed guy, the real guy.
Yeah. And I think intrinsically I felt that even
Yeah.
at a young age.
Yeah.
I was like, you're really not having a high expectation of me. Like, okay, I'm just going to be quiet.
Yeah.
And I had much more to say.
Yeah. No, I think that's an important thing to realize, that you have a lot more power than you think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I think it's good. I'm okay. Now I don't see loud and opinionated as shame triggers.
Yeah.
And I see them as, yep, I'm loud and opinionated, and it's okay. It's a strength. And it's funny because I think about that quality in men would be described as bold and confident. But but sometimes in women, we have this unwanted.
True. You don't describe a man as loud necessarily.
No.
But
no.
that is a common description for women who speak up.
Yeah. And so it's an interesting, culture we live in. And so I think it's just about understanding where those perceptions come from. How important is it to you? And
what's a good takeaway? Like if someone's listening to this and they're like, oh yeah, I have this issue, or this is something I want to work on. What's a good takeaway for everyone?
I think it's loving yourself. I think that's the antidote, right? I mean, that's essentially what you did with Shy Guy.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true. And I understand who I am. And that's a process. I mean, go through the Julia Roberts, Runaway Bride exercise.
Go first watch Runaway Bride.
Yes. And figure out, well, what kind of ice cream do I like, so to speak?
That inventory, right.
Yes. And what's there, and like it. Be okay with it.
Build that confidence in you.
Yes. And I think that that's the antidote to the unwanted identity, is loving the person that you are and the person that you're becoming, and accepting that you're going to have flaws and weaknesses and shortcomings. And there are things about yourself that aren't going to make everyone around you comfortable all the time, but that's not your job. So I think it's, really accepting and loving yourself.
Can I ask, I don't want this to be a tangent, but just this popped in my mind. What about I am what I am, the crutch of I am what I am? You have to accept
Deal with it.
Deal with it.
I've seen that in marriage counseling.
Right? So how does that play? Because that just popped in my mind, and I almost feel like that's going too far.
Yeah, because that's about not open to change. We could do a whole podcast episode on that, right?
I am what I am. Deal with it.
Yeah, deal with it.
Podcast number 7.
Because part of what this is I love that I'm in progress.
And it's intentional.
Yes.
It's not like, well, default, I don't know how to fix that, so I'm just going to call it me.
Right. And when couples come in, if a partner says, yeah, I'm not interested in changing.
You knew what you married.
Right. Then you're not going to make a lot of progress. So something like, if it really bothered my husband that I was loud and opinionated, I mean, if that is something that had developed after we got married, then I might have to look at myself and say, well, maybe I don't need to speak up every time I have a thought about something, or I have a strong opinion or passion about an idea. But I think I would have to be flexible in my partnership and sensitive to how it impacts my partner. But I don't think we have to live small to be something someone else needs us to be. But I also don't think we put up a guardrail to our progress because that's uncomfortable too, to continue to develop as a person. So that whole, I am who I am, just deal with it. You might get away with that when you're 80.
Yeah.
But after that or before that, I think we should always be open to, I know I am this way. If that's hard for my partner or the people significant in my life, it's something I can look at and work on. But the reality is, a lot of ourselves, when we're being authentic, is we're sharing that openly in our relationships anyway. Hey, this is something I'm working on. This is something I'm aware of. My friends know I'm aware of my opinions and that I'm trying to temper those, or not. I don't speak out every time I want to, or and I certainly am not very opinionated or loud when it comes to social media or other mediums. But when I'm having a conversation with someone I feel connected to, it's much easier for me to be okay with that part of myself.
Yeah, because you can identify that, like I said, crutch intentionally to see if that was like a kind of triggering word.
Yeah.
And I think, so I intentionally sent that word, like, is it a crutch? Because people throw that out there, and then they kind of take accountability. I don't have to deal with, I don't have to fix anything. I don't have to work on myself.
Right.
And I think, I mean, my opinion is the nature of life is it's always a work in progress.
Yeah.
There's always something to do. And
If the seed was like, I'm a seed, deal with it.
right.
We'd never eat anything, right? I mean, it's just like
That's a great
everything is developing
Yeah.
and opening. I think we just have to realize, and so are we,
Yeah.
and accept that part of human nature.
Right. And when you do say, if that's your excuse or if that's your justification, I am what I am, it backfires because it causes the other person then to guard against you, right?
Or it will
armor
limit
up.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It will limit what you'll experience.
Well, it's easy. If someone says I am what I am, then well, I am too then, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're not going to change, I'm not going to change. Now we're battling, right?
Yeah. Or it will just limit you to the people who will accept that.
Yeah.
Instead of like, well, let me see how I can, grow and develop as a person in this aspect of my life or in this relationship.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
lots to think about.
If that's all we wanted was like I am what I am, we wouldn't have to be we'd be out of jobs, right? Well, everyone is.
Well, and there are people who are fine living that way, and that's more power to them, right? They're accepting this is how I am, and I'm not interested in changing it. Well, that's someone who knows what they're willing to do and not do, and so
Fully accepting that identity.
Yeah. So that's fair.
Well, very good. As always, it's a pleasure talking to you.
Good to see you. We'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Thanks for joining us on the Davenport. Thanks so much for listening this week. Stay connected by following us on Instagram or Facebook at the Davenport Podcast. For more information on coaching services with Guy, visit his website, thecoachguy.net. For additional information regarding counseling services, the Daring Way curriculum, or relationship counseling, please go to jamiepyatt.lcsw.com.
The Davenport podcast is provided for informational and entertainment purposes only. Although Jamie is a licensed clinical social worker and Guy is a professional life coach, the information and opinions shared by the hosts and their guests are not intended to be a substitute for professional, medical, or mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The information on this show does not create a client-therapist or coaching relationship and should not be taken as professional advice or guidance. Please consult with your physician or a qualified healthcare provider regarding any medical or mental health conditions.